welcome back to the studio. Today we are going to be working on the first block of Radiant Garden. Okay, so I'm going to pull the camera in. We're going to pull out one block, one kit, and we're going to set up our iron, and we're going to get started with the very first block in the Radiant Garden kit. We've already done one video on the cutting of the background. So let's get this thing on the road. Now that we have all of the preamble over, I'm going to go ahead and start with unkitting the first package. This is Radiant Garden 4 Seasons quilt. It's block number 1. You always get a full color cover sheet in the package showing you the positioning of your pieces of fabric, and it's a design inspiration. I like to take the kit with me when I'm picking out my fabric, and I kind of just do this. Sometimes I'll pull the pieces out just to check for value, but I really like the way that this is looking. So I have my full color cover sheet. I can go ahead and slip that in here just to keep it protected in case I spill my tea. And we also have our placement guide. This is usually a full-size paper pattern now. Some of the older ones were in sections and you had to tape them together. And when I get mine open, caught the end of my plastic, that's not good. I just like to iron out the creases on my paper. I'm using a dry iron, and I do this just so I don't translate any of the creases from the pattern into the placement of the components. And if we have done our cutting right, you can see that the background block fits exactly in the square of the paper placement guide. And depending on your ability to see through your background fabric, and that's going to depending on the choice you made, you may or may not utilize a light box. I think I'm going to go ahead and plug my light box in today because some of the little pieces on my design are a little bit darker than others, and we'll see how that looks. And then I'm going to go ahead, well, I think I'll do the light box first because it will be bigger. Then I'm going to pull out all of my components, and what I like to do is put all of the similar leaves in one pile, all of the little question marks in another pile, all my circles in another one. So as I'm going, it's a little bit easier to get the pieces in position. As you can see, I have my light box out, my paper placement guide. The kit also has instructions on how the process of the laser cut and pre-fused applique works, so we could set those aside. And as I turn on my light box, you'll be able to see, in this particular case, how much better we can see the pattern through the background. This is one of the cases where it makes a big difference. So now I'm just going to separate the pieces out into like shapes, and I just like to do this because it just helps clarity for me, for my mind. Some of these shapes look very similar, but you can see in this case, if we tried to overlap these two, one's a right and one's a left. No, these are the same. Well, sometimes you'll see that. Let me see if I can find one. Well, here's a right and a left. Sometimes it's easy to misplace something. by using what you think might be the right shape or size. So I always like to double and triple check before I get to the fusing. I'm not going very fast at this today, am I? Here's another right and left. These look like little parentheses. I didn't think this was the right size at first, but I can see it's been folded over to fit in the kit. What I like to do is iron this flat and let it cool before we get a chance to use that piece. And then by the time we're ready, that'll be cooled down enough for me to peel the paper. These look like little parentheses or little asterisks. In the beginning, I also used to like to have ambient music playing in the background because growing up, we always heard if you were doing any kind of TV or broadcasting that you had to have someone talking at all times. There always had to be someone talking. And that made me nervous. So I wanted music in the background so it would not make me feel like I had to talk so much. But people complained about the music in the background and they said they couldn't hear me. So I had to find another way to deal with that. And that was just a matter of getting comfortable doing the videos and talking. So I have all of my pieces laid out, and some of the pieces, as you can see here, are 2 layers. There's 2 circles, one on top of each other. And it's helpful to look at the color cover placement guide here to see which 2 pieces would go together. In this case, it will be these 2 pieces. Now you could do these 2 and pull the background away so you can get an exact center on those, because the background fabric may make it too thick to read through all the layers. But I think if we get close to the center will be good enough. The process on this, these pieces are all taken in the factory and they put Steam 2 on huge pieces of fabric, and then they use a laser cutter and they cut out these components. The laser cutter gives you incredibly crisp edges. I almost feel like it sears the edge so that there's almost no fraying of any kind. If you cut that with a home cutting machine or with scissors, you're more likely not to get the same clean edge, but you can still do a pretty good job. Most of these pieces are sold, these kits are sold as SVG file, which is scalable vector graphics, and that means you could use a Cameo Silhouette or a Brothers Scan and Cut to use your own fabric by downloading, buying these kits and downloading them that way. What ours do, you just bend the fabric a little bit and you can peel that paper backing off, and I find that for the most part in my climate these peel off very easily. And the tackiness of the Steam 2 will hold that into position until I'm ready to fuse. You can pick up the pieces and reposition them as you need to. And I'm just going to keep stacking my little paper backings off together because I don't like them to fall on the floor. Because when they do, they're hard to get up off the floor because they're still a little tacky. And I'm just going to continue peeling and placing these, which are the 2 first steps of this process: peel, place, and press. So we're doing the peeling and the placing now. I'm just double checking that that's the right size for that. And this piece that we've ironed should be ready to go now. That's a big central piece, so I'm going to go ahead and get that one on. I wish I could tell you that I've come up with a foolproof way of getting these positioned, but I haven't. You could start in the middle, you could start at one end or the other, but you still may have to pick it up and reposition it as necessary. But that's the nice thing about that steamer seam too. Let's see, I'm really just kind of daydreaming a little bit today. So this first block may take a little bit longer than it needs to. Every time I do one of these, especially if I haven't done a video in a week or two, I get nervous. I get nervous all over again. If you look really close, you can actually see the pattern on the batik, and that helps you decide which one goes where. I can see on this particular one that it starts darker in the middle and works its way out to the lighter one. It looks like I never finished putting my pieces in place. These go with these. And I think that's the wrong one. When things are in a value this way, from darkest to lightest, they're trying to create a sense of dimension. The darker the fabric, the further away it goes. So it's just a way of giving you some value in the flower. Most people are attracted to the color of fabric, but it's really the value of the fabric that does most of the work. There's an old saying that says color gets all the credit, but value does all the work. And that is just part of human nature. Okay, so we have only one of these flowers, so that one should be easy to place. This flower shows up in a lot of the kits for Applique Elements. It's even on the logo, the little sample that we send out. And let's see, there's purple, that's too big. And then a green. And by not centering that, it gives the flower a little bit of a quirky nature. This is a little bit like doing a puzzle, and depending on how age your family members are, they either could participate in this with you. If they're super small, you could just leave the paper backing on and let them try and find the shapes on the paper background. If they're a little bit older, they could actually help you peel the papers off and put them into place. And if they're even older yet, they might be old enough to be able to start using the iron with supervision. The nice thing about having people help with a project like this is because it creates an emotional connection to the project itself. So if you're making something as a gift for a family member, you might even want to let them help you make it, and then they have that memory of making that with their favorite aunt or uncle or grandparents, sister. I remember making cookies with my nieces and nephews. If you find a piece of fabric where you're peeling off the paper backing and the steam seam doesn't be adhering to the fabric, you can always put the paper backing back on and just iron it the way you normally would, and then let that piece cool, and then you can go ahead and use it. As I said, these are manufactured in large sections, and they do an amazing job, but you know, you're always going to find one or two pieces that didn't get hit long enough. The further you go, the fewer options you have for making mistakes. It gets a little bit easier to find the right piece. And at this point, we're just about down to the last couple flowers. And I can see I'm shifting a little bit here on my paper background. That little squeaky noise you might hear is me putting my foot up on the support bracket of my table. I don't think it's humanly possible for me to stand here without doing that. And I also normally would be listening to music if I were by myself. Today I ask for spiritual music, and it's playing a selection of piano from my favorite, some of my favorite artists. So obviously it's not playing at the moment. Okay, I've got down to the last two pieces. On some of our other kits, there's a left and a right on these, but these appear to be all one. And that is it. So what I'm going to do is two things simultaneous. Well, three things actually. I'm going to clean up all of my little pieces because I don't like these to fall on the floor because they get stuck to stuff because they're still tacky. So I'll clean that up. I'll remove my light box and pull out my Teflon pressing sheet. And I already have my iron set up, and I can get rid of my background paper. Also, I'm going to look at this because right now I'm looking at this upside down and it looks fine because I know everything's on the pattern. But I will go ahead and look at it right side up just to make sure that everything is visually spaced appropriately and there's no issues. So I'm going to do those things in between a cut here. And then I'm going to get a big sip of my tea. As you can see, I pulled my paper pattern out and the light box, and I have my Teflon pressing sheet both underneath the block. I'll also fold it over the top. Steam Seam is the product we use on the back of the laser cut applique, and as the name implies, steam is a required component of the process. So far we've peeled and placed, now we have to press. I'm going to be using water in a spray bottle, this is a mister, and a dry iron. I don't put water in my iron because an iron will invariably leak at some point in its life. It also goes through self-cleaning cycles sometimes and will spurt rusty water out. And I don't like either of those things to happen. So I'm just going to use plain water. When the heat of the iron gets applied to the block, then it will create steam just as if the steam was coming out of the iron. So I'm going to go ahead and close this up, and then I will talk about all the reasons why I use a pressing sheet. I don't usually have this much trouble. The Teflon pressing sheet is a really amazing tool to utilize when you're doing any kind of fusible applique. Sometimes we get lazy. We're used to pressing clothes in this way. When you're using a fusible web, you want to use the iron directly up and down so that you're not catching the edge of the applique with the edge of the iron, crinkling up the applique and then fusing it up in a crinkled fashion. So this protects the applique and keeps it flat. It keeps any of the fusible material from seeping outside the edge of the applique and getting onto the sole plate of the iron. So I'm not going to require any kind of cleaning on the sole plate when my project is finished. It's also going to protect my background fabric and my applique fabric so that I don't scorch it. And it's just an overall easy, it's very easy to clean if you ever have to get anything on it. But we do have to compensate for the Teflon pressing sheet in our timing. It's going to take time for the heat to transfer through the Teflon pressing sheet, and some of these pieces are compound where you have a circle on top of a circle on top of the background. Well, the heat has to transfer through the Teflon pressing sheet, the top circle, the bottom circle, and into the background of the background fabric. Also, I always press from the top down, and when I'm finished doing that, I will flip the block over, remist it, and I will press again from the top down again, but the block will be upside down. So I'm really making sure that the applique is fused properly. If you do take the time to fuse the applique properly, this is a permanent product. It can be washed and dried without any issue. One of the indications that you have not fused long enough, and we see this often in comments on Facebook and YouTube, is that they're getting gumming on the needle, either when they're top stitching or when they're quilting. If you are getting a lot of adhesive gumming on the needle, that's an indication that you did not fuse long enough or hot enough, or that you did not use steam in the process and it wasn't able to activate the fusible web. So these three things, temperature setting, time, and steam, are all required in this process, and if it's done properly, you will not get that gumming on the needle. Once you get to the sewing machine and you're seeing that, if it's still possible, I would go back and refuse. So I have done this from the top down. All of my pieces are smooth. I don't know if you saw that steam escaping from the envelope when I opened it, but now I'm going to go ahead and do the same process, making sure that the underneath piece of all of the applique was fused properly, and so that there's no issue with any portion of the block. By the time I'm done, my fabric should be completely dry, even though I've done a pretty good job of misting it. That would be another way of knowing that we really have given that heat enough time to penetrate through all the layers. I'm going to go ahead and finish this process, and then we'll show you the completed block. This is the first block. I was a little trepidatious about my background choice, but I think seeing this first block, I'm going to be very happy with the outcome. It is a batik on a batik, so I was pretty sure that that would work. My major concern was really one of value, that the value would not be strong enough, but I think it's plenty strong enough to be able to see this clearly across the room, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of these blocks go together. So I'm going to continue on. There are 10 blocks in this series. I have all of my fabric and all of my kits already aside. There are only two different size block units, and basically the one block is the size equivalent of 2 high or 2 wide, so that the blocks could go together easily. And I just am excited about it. This is an older kit, but I think it still holds up very well as far as beauty and style. Of course, the batiks always look good, and flowers, I think, in any time period, you know, it looks great. I think this would look great in a wide variety of houses and homes, apartments, and it would make a great kit. You saw in real time how long it took me to do it, and I was kind of mumbling along as I did it, so I think it could even be faster if you were doing it at home, and it's something you could certainly do with a group of friends as a group project, like bridesmaids for a bride, or friends for someone's housewarming gift or something like that. So thanks for stopping by the studio today. We will see you again next time. Please let us hear any comments that you have. We'd love to interact with you on either YouTube or on Facebook, and these videos are posted in both places simultaneously. And I think probably it's easier to access on YouTube. I think there's somewhere around 150 videos posted at this point. We've been posting a new video every Saturday morning at 9 for at least 3 years now. So I want to thank you for your support. I really appreciate it, those of you who comment, share, or subscribe, because those are our only visual references to how much you are enjoying the videos. We don't charge. We don't want to be a Patreon person. We want to educate for free. That's part of the reason, well, it's most of the reason why I do it. I love the educational aspect of this, and so we thank you for participating and enjoying them. And so we'll see you, we will see you again next time here in the studio.